Ceremony. I stopped liking artichokes when I stopped eating butter. Fennel, I never liked. One thing I've always hated about you, I hate that you refuse to have people at the house. Flaubert had more friends, and Flaubert was a recluse. Flaubert was crazy. He lived with his mother. Living with you is like living at boarding school. Chicken Monday, fish Tuesday. I have deep friendships. I have friendships with other recluses. Why do you call it rigidity? Can't you call it a taste for ceremony? Or is your hunger for beauty completely satisfied by your own person? Another thing, name one other person who doesn't have furniture. We have fish Tuesday because it's fresh Tuesday. If I could drive, we could have it different days. If you're so desperate for precedent, try Stevens. Stevens never traveled. That doesn't mean he didn't know pleasure. Pleasure, maybe, but not joy. When you make artichokes, make them for yourself. That poem is from Meadowlands, which features also the personas of Penelope and Odysseus. And this next poem, Departure, is spoken by Penelope. The night isn't dark. The world is dark. Stay with me a little longer. Your hands on the back of the chair, that's what I'll remember. Before that, lightly stroking my shoulders, like a man training himself to avoid the heart. In the other room, the maid discreetly putting out the light I read by. That room with its chalk walls. How will it look to you, I wonder, once your exile begins? I think your eyes will seek out its light as opposed to the moon. Apparently, after so many years, you need distance to make plain its intensity. Your hands on the chair, stroking my body and the wood in exactly the same way, like a man who wants to feel longing again, who prizes longing above all other emotion. On the beach, voices of the Greek farmers, impatient for sunrise, as though dawn will change them from farmers into heroes. And before that, you are holding me because you are going away. These are statements you are making, not questions needing answers. How can I know you love me unless I see you grieve over me? This is the third poem that I'm going to read, and I chose these thinking about Louise's work as sculptures of belief and in her work a sort of dialectic of belief, where there's often a kind of dialogue between two persons or two voices within a single mind. And this last poem I'm going to read is from the latest book, A Village Life, and it's spoken by a husband. And earlier in the book, we have the wife's voice, which you can look for in the collected. It's titled Figs, I believe. And this one is titled Olive Trees. And here we have, in a way, the farmers down on the beach below the castle of Penelope speaking. Olive trees. The building's brick, so the walls get warm in summer. When the summer goes, they're still warm, especially on the south side. You feel the sun there in the brick, as though it meant to leave its stamp on the wall. not just sail over it on its way to the hills. I take my breaks here, leaning against the wall, smoking cigarettes. The bosses don't mind. They joke that if the business fails, they'll just rent wall space. Big joke. Everybody laughs out loud, very loud. But you can't eat. They don't want rats here looking for scraps. Some of the others don't care about being warm, feeling the sun on their backs from the warm brick. They want to know where the views are. To me, it is important what I see. I grew up in those hills. I'll be buried there. In between, I don't need to keep sneaking looks. My wife says when I say things like this, my mouth goes bitter. She loves the village. Every day, she misses her mother. She misses her youth, how we met there and fell in love, how our children were born there. She knows she'll never go back, but she keeps hoping. At night, in bed, her eyes film over. She talks about the olive trees, the long silver leaves shimmering in the sunlight, and the bark, the trees themselves so supple, pale gray like the rocks behind them. She remembers picking the olives. Who made the best brine? I remember her hands then smelling of vinegar and the bitter taste of the olives before you knew not to eat them fresh off the tree. And I remind her how useless they were without the people to cure them, brine them, set them out in the sun. And I tell her, all nature is like that to me, useless and bitter. It's like a trap. You fall into it because of the olive leaves, because they're beautiful. You grow up looking at the hills, how the sun sets behind them, and the olive trees, waving and shimmering. And you realize that if you don't get out fast, you'll die, as though this beauty were gagging you so you couldn't breathe. And I tell her, I know we're trapped here, but better to be trapped by decent men who even redo the lunchroom than by the sun and the hills. When I complain here, my voice is heard. Somebody's voice is heard. There's dispute, there's anger, but human beings are talking to each other, the way my wife and I talk, talking even when they don't agree, when one of them is only pretending. In the other life, your despair just turns into silence. The sun disappears behind the western hills. When it comes back, there's no reference at all to your suffering. So your voice dies away. You stop trying, not just with the sun, but with human beings. And the small things that made you happy can't get through to you anymore. I know things are hard here, and the owners, I know they lie sometimes, but there are truths that ruin a life. The same way, some lies are generous, warm and cozy, like the sun on the brick wall. So when you think of the wall, you don't think prison. More the opposite. You think of everything you escaped being here. And then my wife gives up for the night. She turns her back. Some nights she cries a little. Her only weapon was the truth. It is true the hills are beautiful, and the olive trees really are like silver. But a person who accepts a lie, who accepts support from it because it's warm, it's pleasant for a little while, that person she'll never understand, no matter how much she loves him.
Okay, let's see if we can get the equipment straight. Celestial music. I have a friend who still believes in heaven. Not a stupid person, yet with all she knows, she literally talks to God. She thinks someone listens in heaven. On earth, she's unusually competent, brave too, able to face unpleasantness. We found a caterpillar dying in the dirt, greedy ants crawling over it. I'm always moved by weakness, by disaster, always eager to oppose vitality, but timid also, quick to shut my eyes. Whereas my friend was able to watch, to let events play out according to nature. For my sake, she intervened, brushing a few ants off the torn thing and set it down across the road. My friend says I shut my eyes to God, that nothing else explains my aversion to reality. She says I'm like the child who buries her head in the pillow so as not to see, the child who tells herself that light causes sadness. My friend is like the mother, patient, urging me to wake up an adult like herself, a courageous person. In my dreams, my friend reproaches me. We're walking on the same road, except it's winter now. She's telling me that when you love the world, you hear celestial music. Look up, she says. When I look up, nothing. Only clouds, snow, a white business in the trees like brides leaping to a great height. Then I'm afraid for her. I see her caught in a net deliberately cast over the earth. In reality, we sit by the side of the road watching the sunset. From time to time, the silence pierced by a bird call. It's this moment we're both trying to explain, the fact that we're at ease with death, with solitude. My friend draws a circle in the dirt. Inside, the caterpillar doesn't move. She's always trying to make something whole, something beautiful, an image capable of life apart from her. We're very quiet. It's peaceful sitting here, not speaking. The composition fixed, the road turning suddenly dark, the air going cool here and there, the rocks shining and glittering. It's this stillness that we both love. The love of form is a love of endings. That's a poem written in Vermont, where Louise lived for 25 years and wrote 6 books, and then moved to Cambridge to a new life, a vita nova. And so the next poem I'll read is written there, Nest. A bird was making its nest. In the dream, I watched it closely. In my life, I was trying to be a witness, not a theorist. The place you begin doesn't determine the place you end. The bird took what it found in the yard, its base materials, nervously scanning the bare yard in early spring, in debris by the south wall, pushing a few twigs with its beak. Image of loneliness, the small creature coming up with nothing, then dry twigs, carrying one by one the twigs to the hideout, which is all it was then. It took what there was, the available material. Spirit wasn't enough. And then it wove like the first Penelope, but toward a different end. How did it weave? It weaved carefully but hopelessly the few twigs with any suppleness, any flexibility, choosing these over the brittle, the recalcitrant. Early spring, late desolation. The bird circled the bare yard, making efforts to survive on what remained to it. It had its task to imagine the future, steadily flying around, patiently bearing small twigs to the solitude of the exposed tree in the steady coldness of the outside world. I had nothing to build with. It was winter. I couldn't imagine anything but the past. I couldn't even imagine the past if it came to that. And I didn't know how I came here. Everyone else much farther along. I was back at the beginning, at a time in life we can't remember beginnings. The bird collected twigs in the apple tree, relating each addition to existing mass. But when was there suddenly mass? It took what it found after the others were finished, the same materials. Why should it matter to be finished last? The same materials, the same limited, good brown twigs, broken and fallen, and in one, a length of yellow wool. Then it was spring, and I was inexplicably happy. I knew where I was, on Broadway with my bag of groceries, spring fruit in the stores, first cherries at Formaggio, Forsythia beginning. First, I was at peace. Then I was contented, satisfied. And then flashes of joy. And the season changed for all of us, of course. And as I peered out, my mind grew sharper. And I remember accurately the sequence of my responses, my eyes fixing on each thing from the shelter of the hidden self. First, I love it. Then, I can use it. One last poem from her last book, A Village Life. This is called Tributaries. All the roads in the village unite at the fountain. Avenue of Liberty, Avenue of the acacia trees. The fountain rises at the center of the plaza. On sunny days, rainbows in the piss of the cherub. In summer, couples sit at the pool's edge. There's room in the pool for many reflections. The plaza's nearly empty. The acacia trees don't get this far. And the Avenue of Liberty is barren and austere. Its image doesn't crowd the water. Interspersed with the couples, mothers with their younger children. Here's where they come to talk to one another. Maybe meet a young man, see if there's anything left of their beauty. When they look down, it's a sad moment. The water isn't encouraging. The husbands are off working, but by some miracle, all the amorous young men are always free. They sit at the edge of the fountain, splashing their sweethearts with fountain water. Around the fountain, there are clusters of metal tables. This is where you sit when you're old, beyond the intensities of the fountain. The fountain is for the young who still want to look at themselves, or for the mothers who need to keep their children diverted. In good weather, a few old people linger at the tables. Life is simple now. One day cognac, one day coffee and a cigarette. To the couples, it's clear who's on the outskirts of life, who's at the center. The children cry, they sometimes fight over toys, but the water's there to remind the mothers that they love these children, that for them to drown would be terrible. The mothers are tired constantly. The children are always fighting. The husbands at work are angry. No young man comes. The couples are like an image from some faraway time, an echo coming very faint from the mountains. They are alone at the fountain in a dark well. They've been exiled by the world of hope, which is the world of action. But the world of thought hasn't as yet opened to them. When it does, everything will change. Darkness is falling, the plaza empties. The first leaves of autumn litter the fountain. The roads don't gather here anymore. The fountain sends them away, back into the hills they came from. Avenue of broken faith, avenue of disappointment, avenue of the acacia trees, of olive trees, the wind filling with silver leaves, avenue of lost time, avenue of liberty that ends in stone, not at the field's edge, but at the foot of the mountain.
Thank you. You won't hear anything now. Oh, you'll hear the sound of falling water. Is that right? Thank you. Thank you, all of you. I'm going to read two poems tonight, one long one, one short one. First one, you can't hear? How is this? The first one is a poem called October. It has 6 sections. October 1. Is it winter again? Is it cold again? Didn't Frank just slip on the ice? Didn't he heal? Weren't the spring seeds planted? Didn't the night end? Didn't the melting ice flood the narrow gutters? Wasn't my body rescued? Wasn't it safe? Didn't the scar form invisible above the injury? Terror and cold, didn't they just end? Wasn't the back garden harrowed and planted? I remember how the earth felt red and dense. In stiff rows weren't the seeds planted? Didn't vines climb the south wall? I can't hear your voice for the wind's cries, whistling over the bare ground. I no longer care what sound it makes. When was I silenced? When did it first seem pointless to describe that sound? What it sounds like can't change what it is. Didn't the night end? Wasn't the earth safe when it was planted? Didn't we plant the seeds? Weren't we necessary to the earth? The vines, were they harvested? 2. Summer after summer has ended, bomb after violence. It does me no good to be good to me now. Violence has changed me. Daybreak. The low hills shine ochre and fire, even the fields shine. I know what I see. Sun that could be the August sun returning everything that was taken away. You hear this voice. This is my mind's voice. You can't touch my body now. It has changed once. It has hardened. Don't ask it to respond again. A day like a day in summer, exceptionally still. The long shadows of the maples nearly mauve on the gravel paths. And in the evening, warmth. Night like a night in summer. It does me no good. Violence has changed me. My body has grown cold like the stripped fields. Now there is only my mind, cautious and wary, with the sense it is being tested. Once more the sun rose as it rose in summer. Bounty, balm after violence, balm after the leaves have changed, after the fields have been harvested and turned. Tell me this is the future, I won't believe you. Tell me I'm living, I won't believe you. 3. Snow had fallen. I remember music from an open window. Come to me, said the world. This is not to say it spoke in exact sentences, but that I perceived beauty in this manner. Sunrise, a film of moisture on each living thing. Pools of cold light formed in the gutters. I stood at the doorway, ridiculous as it now seems. What others found in art, I found in nature. What others found in human love, I found in nature. Very simple, but there was no voice there. Winter was over. In the thawed dirt, bits of green were showing. Come to me, said the world. I was standing in my wool coat at a kind of bright portal. I can finally say, long ago, it gives me considerable pleasure. Beauty, the healer, the teacher. Death cannot harm me more than you have harmed me, my beloved life. 4. The light has changed. Middle sea is tuned darker now, and the songs of morning sound over-rehearsed. This is the light of autumn, not the light of spring. The light of autumn, you will not be spared. The songs have changed. The unspeakable has entered them. This is the light of autumn, not the light that says, I am reborn. Not the spring dawn, I strained, I suffered, I was delivered. This is the present, an allegory of waste. So much has changed. And still you are fortunate. The ideal burns in you like a fever, or not like a fever, like a second heart. The songs have changed, but really they are still quite beautiful. They have been concentrated in a smaller space, the space of the mind. They are dark now, with desolation and anguish. And yet the notes recur. They hover oddly in anticipation of silence. The ear gets used to them. The eye gets used to disappearances. You will not be spared, nor will what you love be spared. A wind has come and gone, taking apart the mind. It has left in its wake a strange lucidity. How privileged you are to be still passionately clinging to what you love. The forfeit of hope has not destroyed you. Maestoso, doloroso. This is the light of autumn. It has turned on us. Surely it is a privilege to approach the end, still believing in something. 5. It is true there is not enough beauty in the world. It is also true that I am not competent to restore it. Neither is there candor, and here I may be of some use. I am at work, though I am silent. The bland misery of the world bounds us on either side, an alley lined with trees. We are companions here, not speaking, each with his own thoughts. Behind the trees, iron gates of the private houses, the shuttered rooms somehow deserted, abandoned, as though it were the artist's duty to create hope. But out of what? What? The word itself false, a device to refute perception. At the intersection, ornamental lights of the season. I was young here, riding the subway with my small book, as though to defend myself against this same world. You are not alone, the poem said, in the dark tunnel. 6. The brightness of the day becomes the brightness of the night. The fire becomes the mirror. My friend, the earth is bitter. I think sunlight has failed her. Bitter or weary, it is hard to say. Between herself and the sun, something has ended. She wants now to be left alone. I think we must give up turning to her for affirmation. Above the fields, above the roofs of the village houses, the brilliance that made all life possible becomes the cold stars. Lie still and watch. They give nothing, but ask nothing. From within the earth's bitter disgrace, coldness and barrenness, my friend, the moon rises. She is beautiful tonight, but when is she not beautiful? The last poem from Village Life is called Crossroads. My body, now that we will not be traveling together much longer, I begin to feel a new tenderness toward you, very raw and unfamiliar, like what I remember of love when I was young. Love that was so often foolish in its objectives, but never in its choices, its intensities. Too much demanded in advance, too much that could not be promised. My soul has been so fearful, so violent. Forgive its brutality. As though it were that soul, my hand moves over you cautiously, not wishing to give offense, but eager finally to achieve expression as substance. It is not the earth I will miss. It is you I will miss. Thank you.